a lot of you out there do have questions in regards to what is the proper way of doing long runs. Should I run easy every weekend? Should I start changing up how I attack these long runs? And I want to give you some examples of long runs that I was doing that helped me break the 2 hour and 20-minute marathon barrier. And these examples that I wrote down were practically the exact types of long runs that I was doing that helped me go from running from a personal best of 2:43.36 for the marathon down to 2:19.35. And again, these three examples I'm going to be sharing with you are for the athlete that is trying to run a 2:19.59. So what I want you to do is, if maybe your personal best right now is 4:15 and you're trying to get under 4 minutes or you're trying to get under 4 hours, or maybe your personal best is 3:45 and you're trying to get to 3:25. Look at how I've set up these particular long runs for the example of an athlete trying to break 2:20, and factor that into how you're going to be doing your long runs. Now, I do have training plans on RunDreamAchieve.com that have these types of long runs built into them. Also, the running courses that I have for athletes that are trying to break a 4-hour marathon, 3-hour marathon, a sub 3:30, or athletes that are trying to break 2:30 for the marathon, or athletes that are trying to break 2 hours for the half marathon. You definitely want to check out the running courses that are on RunDreamAchieve.com as well, because I go into very in-depth on every aspect of training, whether it's heart rate training, whether it's mindset, whether it's long runs or track sessions in those particular courses. But what I want to do with this particular video on long run pace for marathon training is to give you some examples of what I was doing that really helped me get under this barrier. And it was not easy, without a doubt. These three examples, long run examples I'm going to be sharing with you, were practically the most difficult workouts I have ever done. Or maybe your personal best is 3:45 and you're trying to get to 3:25. Look at how I've set up these particular long runs for the example of an athlete trying to break 2:20, and factor that into how you're going to be doing your long runs. You really have to pay attention to your nutrition, hydrating well during these efforts. But the first example here is an example of a long run I did, and it's a 19-miler, okay? 2 miles easy, 5 miles at 5:20 mile pace, so right at goal race pace. Then going into a 2-mile jog, 4 miles at 6-minute mile pace, so much easier than goal race pace, but still a very aggressive, solid pace. 2 miles jog, 1 mile in 5:05. Okay, so you're running it much faster than goal race pace here, and then you transition the last 4 miles easy. So again, this mixture of running at 5:20 pace, 6-minute mile pace, jogging pace. That might mean, for me, when I was at my fittest, that was 6:35 to 7:35 mile pace during the easy jogs, and then going back and closing that 1 mile in 5:05. Again, you can see the difference here. You're not just running long, slow, and easy, but to get that 5:20 mile pace, if you're trying to break a 2:20 marathon, you have to hold 5:20 mile pace, or I think around 3:19 per kilometer pace for the entire distance. So how can we get that goal marathon race pace to feel more moderate rather than an all-out effort? Okay, we have to spend time training at or close to or extremely fast efforts. And to do this over a consistent basis. A longer build-up, especially when you're training for the marathon, whether it's you're trying to break 5 hours for the marathon or you're trying to break a 2:20, a longer build-up is always going to set you up for success better than a shorter build-up. So minimum 16 weeks, preferably if you want to do it right, 20 to 24 weeks in length. That is absolutely essential, because again, you're not trying to cram all of this training that you're doing, and you're not going to put more stress on yourself than you need to, because you're allotting sufficient time for your body to adapt to these hard track workouts you're doing, and especially these types of long runs. Again, we don't start off doing 19 to 24 mile long runs immediately in the first week of a marathon buildup. Okay, so the early stages of a 20 to 24 week buildup, your long run might be 6 to 7 miles, And again, we gradually and gently get into the point where we do these types of longer, extremely hard efforts. Okay, again, we have to crawl before we can walk. So make sure that you're focusing first as a marathoner. You're building that aerobic base. You're doing strides 2 to 3 times per week, anywhere from 3 to 5 100-meter strides. Do those during your aerobic base building phase. And again, you want to just focus on your form, focus on a gradual increase in intensity during those strides, where you're running practically about the last 20 to 30 meters of your 100-meter stride all out. Okay? And the good thing about doing strides is you're not going to build up any significant lactic acid, and you can continue to do strides during your aerobic phase. Then as you go into your specific marathon training phase, all throughout your entire marathon buildup. And what's great is, what we as athletes don't know is, and don't think of that often, is when you're doing strides over a 4 to 6 month buildup, you will have spent several miles or several kilometers running at sprint paces. And again, that's great, because you're recruiting more fast twitch muscle fibers, which in turn, as your body adapts and you get fitter, is going to make your goal marathon race pace to feel easier for you. And that's the goal. If you're trying to break a 220 like I was trying to do, my goal was to break 222. The training I was putting in helped me to eventually break the 220. Instead of breaking 222, it helped me to break the 220 marathon barrier. But again, these types of principles, varied paced efforts, will help anyone, whether it's someone trying to break the 5-hour marathon or 6-hour marathon barrier, or somebody trying to break 220. The second example of a long run pace for marathon training for an athlete training to break the 220 marathon barrier, and again, this is the exact type of long run I was doing. 2 miles easy, 10 miles at 5:35 mile pace. So again, very solid effort here. 15 seconds slower than goal race pace, but you better be in great physical and mental shape to even hold 10 miles at 5:35 mile pace, and it takes time. So this is just an example. 2 miles easy, 10 miles at 5:35, 4 miles easy, 2 miles at 5:15 mile pace, so 5 seconds faster than goal race pace for somebody trying to break 220. Then going into 3 miles easy, 1 mile at 5, and then going into 1 mile in 5 flat. So again, VO2 max effort, much, you're closer down toward your 10K race pace for somebody trying to break 220. And then and then an easy 2 mile jog. So you see, there's again a mixture of efforts here. You're running 10 miles at 5:35 mile pace, which is still aggressive, but not so fast that you're going to go into oxygen debt and go too anaerobic. Then running a few miles easy, running 2 miles at 5:15 mile pace, which is a few seconds faster than goal race pace. And then you're running a few miles easy, dropping a mile in 5 flat. Okay, another example of the types of long runs I was doing that I liked over the years was doing a 20 miler, and every fourth mile of that 20 miler, I would run a sub 5 minute mile, like 4:52 to 4:56. Every fourth mile, I'd aim to run a sub 5 minute mile. Okay, those types of efforts helped me to get to the point where I could go and make 5:19 mile pace feel manageable. Okay, so the last example is a longer long run example here, but this is for somebody that's again in phenomenal anaerobic shape. They've trained well. This is you're midway through, or in about the last quarter of a build-up, probably about 4 weeks out from your goal marathon. This is the type of long run I would aim for. 2 miles easy, 3 miles at 5:10 mile pace, 10 seconds faster than goal race pace for the athlete trying to break 220. 4 miles easy, 1 mile in 4:55, 3 miles easy, 4 miles at 5:25 mile pace, 5 seconds slower than goal race pace, so still very aggressive running. 4 miles easy, 1 mile in 5:05, and then a 2 mile jog cool down. So again, that takes an enormous amount of effort, both mentally and physically. This is why when you're doing these varied pace long runs, you want to be patient with yourself. You want to be gradual in your buildup. You don't want to, like I said, start off doing like these long run examples that I've shared with you guys and gals here. These range anywhere from 19, 22, and 24 miles in length. So be be patient with yourself during your build-up. First, focus on running easy, relaxed long runs first. Build that aerobic base. Don't start doing varied pace long runs until, again, you've spent a few weeks of running easy, relaxed mileage. And again, a long run, a varied pace long run in the early stages of your build-up might mean, as a marathoner, might be 7 to 8 miles. But again, you're mixing up the intensities. And then as you get fitter, both mentally and physically, then you want to start focusing on, okay, I want to get this long run out. I want to spend a longer duration of time running at varied paced efforts, but I want to make sure that I'm getting my goal marathon race pace to feel easier for me. So this long run pace training that I talk about here, you have to make sure that you're focusing on the other fundamentals too. You can't continue to do these types of varied paced long runs every other weekend if you're not recovering, if you're not paying attention to jogging on your easy days, jogging on during the recovery sections of these long runs as well. Okay, don't get so hyped up and focused on, well, I ran this particular pace per kilometer or per mile throughout my long run. Focus on the really hard intensities, the hard efforts during these long runs. That's what matters the most. And again, because these long runs are so demanding, you do want to make sure that when it comes to the easy sections, you're jogging. Okay, 10, even as a 220 marathoner, if you're trying to break 220, jog might mean 9-minute mile pace. Okay, 9 to 10 minutes, just easy trotting. I mean, I've trained with athletes that were much faster than me over the distance, marathon distance. I ran 219. I've trained with guys that could break 210. During their easy days, they would be out running 8 to 9 minute mile pace. And for somebody that's able to run well under 5:20 mile pace for 26.2 miles, 8 to 9 minute mile pace is very easy. So pay attention to what these world-class athletes do. Mimic their work ethic and their work output during training, and factor that into your own, and that will make sure that you really start to see some significant improvements in your training and in your racing. Obviously, all the other things I talk about, if you're training for a marathon and you're trying to run a new personal best, start practicing hydrating better starting now, so that 2024, or if you're watching this video many years from now, you want to make sure that in training that you're paying attention to how you hydrate, so that when you get to the race, you have a better understanding of how much fluid and glycogen or sugar intake that your body can withstand. That way you're better prepared. And the faster you're training. And in the marathon, if you're training for a 6-hour marathon or you're trying to break 220 for the marathon, you need hydration, you need fluid, you need calories. And a lot of times athletes will skimp on this. They pass aid stations, or they think they can get through a marathon without drinking, and they become dehydrated at the last and the most portions of the race. You don't want to do that. So make sure that you're not passing aid stations. You're taking in even if you have to stop for a few seconds at an aid station to drink a couple Dixie cups, the entire contents, do so. It's better to do that than to pass an aid station, or to just run past an aid station and grab a Dixie cup and half the contents of the cup falls out, and you're drinking the equivalent of a few ounces for an entire 26.2 mile or 42.2 kilometer race. Pay attention to this, because if you improve upon that, if you start doing these varied pace long runs, like the examples I've set here in this video, you are going to start dropping significant time off of your marathon event. I don't care if you're training for the 1500 meter event or the marathon. If you start doing your long runs and you're getting beyond just easy, slow long runs, and you're doing that every single weekend, if you get beyond that, you're going to start seeing some major jumps in what you do in the race. Okay, not to state that easy long runs aren't important. They are vital, but just don't get in the habit of doing it every single weekend. I hope that makes sense. In terms of long run pace training for marathoners, these are some of the examples of the types of long runs I want you thinking about. Okay, and again, this was an example for an athlete that's trying to break 220, but factor the types of efforts here. Okay, if you're trying to break a 4-hour marathon, 909 mile pace or 541 kilometer pace is the goal. So that might mean running 5 miles at in the first example, running 5 miles at 9:09 mile pace, so right at goal race pace, running 4 miles in your 19 miler at say around 8:45 mile pace, and then closing and running a 1 mile at say around 8:25. Okay, so again, you just factor in whatever particular goal you're aiming for, factor in these types of efforts. And again, the training plans and the running courses on RunDreamAchieve.com will help you as well. That it definitely takes the guesswork out. It gives you at least an indication of, okay, this is what I need to be doing on each specific workout. This is also the types of runs I need to be doing, the amount of volume, the amount of intensity throughout my week. And remember, the world's top middle to long distance runners are running about 40% of their weekly volume at anaerobic threshold or below. So they make racing look easy for a reason. It's not just because they're from Kenya or they're Ethiopian. They're just spending a higher percentage of their weekly mileage at a higher intensity. So again, they make racing look easy because of that. They're running more of their mileage is spent at a higher heart rate and at a higher intensity. But it's not to say that they don't jog on easy days and take it easy. They still do that, but they're just really focused and drilled down and niche down into their particular goal race pace, and they want to make sure that goal race pace feels easier for them, and they accomplish that by training at much higher intensities. But again, your goal doesn't have to be a world-class athlete or to run 40% of the weekly volume. That's not the norm. So maybe it's 15 to 25% of your weekly volume will help you set a new personal best. So just keep that in mind. Quality over quantity. Okay, it's not just about running 100-mile weeks that's going to guarantee you a new personal best in the marathon. If that volume, that 100-mile weeks, if 95 to 98% of that weekly volume is just easy aerobic mileage, you're going to have a very difficult time going up against somebody that's running 50 miles a week, but maybe 30% of their weekly volume or 40% is spent at a much higher intensity. Okay, so you just have to get beyond that long, slow mindset. So I hope this is helpful for you all in terms of long run pace for marathon training. If you have any other questions, leave me a comment below. Like and share these videos. I really appreciate that, and all the support for all of you. The comments and people just sharing their experiences really helps keep me going and inspires me what you guys and gals out there are really doing in training and in your racing. So I wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.